Hi there. So today's topic is a little bit of a challenging one, and it's about suicide. And I want to tell you a little bit about what happens in the brain, in the human actual brain, before you commit suicide. I'll tell you about my own story, my own journey, because I used to be highly suicidal. So apart from the fact that I speak to a lot of people as a life transformation guide, apart from the fact that I speak to a lot of people and support a lot of families that go through things like this, I have gone through my own journey with this, and I've gone through quite an extended journey with this. So before we get into this, so welcome to the video, Major Nelson, welcome to the video. Before we get into this, I want to ask you very nicely, if you are one of those people that like to post comments and, be all snotty and, and write about, give your heart to Jesus and whatever, can we please just lay off those type of comments, at least just for this video, okay? People that go through these challenges, people that go through this experience where a loved one, or even just somebody that they happen to know, or even a neighbor that they don't know that well, anybody who goes through this experience whose life is impacted by suicide, it is a very, very difficult thing to deal with. There's a lot of self-blame that often goes along with this. So if you've maybe lost somebody to suicide, first of all, I want to send you lots of compassion from my heart. Or if maybe you have been very suicidal and you've had difficulty explaining, to your loved ones, to your people, why that was, then maybe you can forward them this video. Perhaps it can help you. I hope so. I really, really do. Okay. So the first thing that I want to let you know right out the gate is that the reason why you couldn't help the person who was suicidal, the reason why you didn't pick up any signs, is not because you were too busy or to whatever. When people really committed to ending their own lives, there's a very different sort of flow that goes through their mind. They start to operate very differently. And once they really made up their mind, they don't want to be stopped. So they're going to do what they need to do to make sure that you don't become suspicious of them. Okay? So, first of all, so a couple of years ago, I read a book that really, really intrigued me. And I think that brought me to, everything that I do today, studied NLP and hypnotherapy and, ThetaHealing and all those really incredible things where that is just, I'm so proud to say that I'm able to help people so beautifully these days, especially if you are dealing with something like this, because by the time that you end your life, you have typically tried everything. Now, a lot of times there is some mental disease, that is in the family. And mental challenges is something that is typically inherited. More often than not, it is inherited in the same way that diabetes can be in your genes, sort of like, in your sort of like generational sort of setup. A lot of times a tendency towards suicide, especially when there's some mental health problems going on, typically it's in the family already. And more often than not, we don't know that we're having mental problems. I didn't know that I was having mental problems. Okay, I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. And I still have mental challenges, so, I have to really take very conscious control of my mindset to make sure that I don't end up at the bad end of that, because otherwise I can revert back to that suicidal state. It's very important to know, that I can revert back there. And so I want you to know that a lot of times we see people that are very together, and I am very together, and I'm very happy with my life. But I have to also be mindful of the fact that if I have too much stress in my life, then it takes me into that depressing, sort of stage. And it's going to make me believe that suicide is the best way out. All right? So I want you to know that if a loved one of yours, or even just somebody that you knew, it could even just be a colleague, maybe you didn't know the person that well, there's often a lot of blame that goes on along with that, because as humans, we are prone to life. Okay? I want you to know that it's not your fault. I really want you to know that, and I really want you to hear me. It's not your fault. It wasn't your fault. You are not to blame. Okay? A lot of times, as I said, we don't notice that a person is suicidal because they don't want you to notice. You know, I remember when I was at my most suicidal, I would be so hyper vigilant all the time that even if I see nobody around me, I would still make sure that if just by some sort of chance, if somebody was seeing me, they should be able to tell that I'm in a very good mood. Okay? Because you don't want to be stopped. All right? So, and also I want to let you know, a lot of people often say, and it's so sad when you hear it, a lot of people often say that, you know, people that commit suicide, that it's a really selfish thing to do. But committing suicide is actually a very brave thing to do. And just stay with me here, okay? It is within the nature of life to sustain life. It is within the nature of human beings to want to stay alive. You will see human beings in the most dire circumstances of life. And they hold on to dear life. They cling on to life because it is within the nature of a human being to want to stay alive. So, quite a period, typically long before the suicide happens. And even if something very suddenly happens, like you lose your job, or you know, maybe you lose like a relationship, or you lose a child or something like that, more often than not, obviously that's the big trigger, you know, that you can't deal with what has transpired in your life. But I can tell you, every single time, if you really look into it, you will see that there is a history. There's some things that have been going on for a while. This was just a trigger. Okay? And, well, that's not 100% always the case, but 99% of the times that's the case. You know, there is that trigger. And so what happens is there is a certain sort of hormonal shift that begins to take place in your brain. And you know that those receptors in your brain, those hormones that are responsible for making you say, okay, I can't do this. If I do this, it's going to be bad. If I do this, you know, it's going to be hurtful to my family. If I do this, you know, it's not going to be a cool thing. That part of your brain that lets you know that sort of neuron that fires that message, that neuron, over a period of time, systematically, it begins to sort of like just stop firing that message. It doesn't fire that message any longer. So by the time people typically take their life, they believe that they are doing their loved ones the biggest favor on the planet. They believe that they are in the way. They believe that everybody's going to be better off without them. They believe there's no more hope for them. There is usually tremendous, tremendous heartbreaking sadness that goes along with this. I remember from myself, many people that I've spoken to, you know, when I went to bed at night, I would pray, basically beg God to please not let me wake up again tomorrow. And when I opened my eyes the following day, I was always so angry, so upset, so disappointed in God, so disappointed in my body, that I just lived, that I was alive another day. I had to go through this day again. It would seem like it was so long. And I would wake up and pray, can it please just be the end of the day? I would pray, can there please be some sort of tsunami or earthquake or something that can just take me, even if there's horrific pain involved. Can somebody please just do a drive-by, or, you know, somebody at the office lose it and just, I don't know, attack me with a laptop and basically kill me. I would pray for that. I would try to actually aggravate people, hopefully that they would actually, you know, they would actually end my life. I really wanted it. And so I want you to know that when people reach the stage where they take their lives, it's a very hard decision. And also remember that apart from the fact that almost sort of like, I don't really want to call it the compassionate part, but you know, that part of you that is not going to think so much anymore about the family and things like that. Just because that part switched off doesn't mean that you're no longer afraid. I mean, the thing that really changed my mind, and this is how powerful our words can be, and I remember this was just a couple of guys that were sitting around and they were joking. None of them even knew what I was going through, you know. And I heard, and they were sharing stories about, you know, multiple people that tried to commit suicide and how it didn't work. And I remember the one was saying that just imagine how crap you would feel if you tried to commit suicide to end your life. and then you wake up in hospital and you're still not dead. I mean, how bad would that be? And that really got me thinking. And that actually made me reach out to my family doctor, you know, and I went to my family doctor and I said to him, listen, quite an amazing guy. I said to him, listen, I don't really know, I don't think you can help me, but, you know, I'm highly suicidal. And I said to myself, well, I suppose I can postpone by one more day. And then he referred me to a psychologist. Okay. Now, this is just my story. You don't have to resonate with my story. But I'm going to tell you basically what I did. So I went to the psychologist. I remember I was in his office for 12 and a half minutes in my consultation. And the guy said, okay, we can't really prove it, but what you are explaining is synonymous with bipolar. And then he put me on medication. I'm not going to say the name of the medication, but he put me on medication. It was quite a light dose of medication. And it gave me two really big benefits. One, I could actually really sleep. I never used to sleep. Like when I say I didn't sleep, I mean I didn't sleep. And when you don't sleep, your hormones go out of balance, everything just goes crazy. Okay? The second thing is, I've never understood why people are always complaining about migraines, because I've had a migraine all of my life. All of my life. Every moment. I mean, I've always had it. It was as normal can be. And the migraine was gone. I felt like I could breathe. But then the reason why I didn't like the medication is because I was just very sort of like dwanky. Everything was just cool, you know. People were taking advantage of me. I lost my job. I was losing my home. I was losing my furniture. I had a photography business on the side. Really expensive, beautiful equipment. You know, people that I put up in my home stole that equipment, sold that equipment, made no secret of the fact that they did it, and I was just okay with it. Everything was just chilled, everything was just cool. So I did what I would not recommend anybody to do. I just went cold turkey off my medication. I hit a depression for something like 6 months. I remember I lived in Cape Town. Now there's a street in Cape Town called Long Street, and it's quite long, you know. So I lived at the top of Long Street, had this beautiful apartment on the 3rd floor, with like a balcony, and it had like this big sort of like a bay window basically. And it was cool because it had no curtains. Well, it had a curtain, but it was never drawn. So I could see outside, but nobody could see inside. And I remember when I hit that Depro, you know, everybody that I helped, nobody was there. One guy came to help me. About a couple of months later, he came to bang on my door. He was like, listen, this is it, you know. But I basically lived off alcohol and weed. Hardly ever ate, you know. And I could wake up and it could be any time of night or day, any day of the week. It could be 3 o'clock in the morning, it could be 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it could be any day of the week. I just didn't care. I didn't pay my rent, I didn't wash myself, I did nothing. I don't even know where my phone was. I was just full-blown depressed. So I do not recommend that you go cold turkey off medication. I definitely recommend that you get some help, that you get some support, you know, if you want to go on alternative things. When I hit a very bad depression again a few years later, when I didn't really know what I was going to do with my life, and it wasn't going anywhere, and I was living with my sister, and I was like, I had this strong suicidal tendencies, but, you know, my nephews were living there as well. I mean, and I was like, I can't really do this to these boys, you know. So then I actually went on microdosing with mushrooms. I use psilocybin, cordyceps, and lion's mane. Now again, if you're not familiar with these things, I don't recommend that you just go and just take and just buy stuff off the shelf and some fly by night. I work with a real shaman who really told me exactly what to do, and it really helped me. Okay. And I went a very natural route, which I still do, and that means that I make sure that I get enough sleep. I make sure that I'm, you know, still live my life the way that I'm supposed to live, but don't get involved in unnecessary conflicts and stuff like that. And so what I want to say to you is that, you know, I think what also happens a lot of times is that when people have been suicidal and then they kind of got things back together again, you know, their life sort of back on track again, they can quite easily feel like they don't have any control over their life. And I want to remind you that mindset is everything. And something that has really helped me, because today is January the 8th, 2025. And so last year, June 2024, I was in this really horrific space in my life, like really horrific space. I was living in an apartment. The landlord was just horrible. I had security that because I work from home, that I wouldn't really want clients to come through because the clients that I deal with are mostly ladies. And these guys would literally look these ladies up and down like they're undressing them. It used to horrify me. And they would be very suggestive, and I mean like outright suggestive. And so my business started to fall. And I couldn't go work anywhere else because I had a dog that was living with me in the apartment. And I thought that my dog and I were going to end up on the street. And that is actually when I found Theta Healing, which is really, really great because it gets to the bottom belief of what it is that's causing you to have these experiences. And I'm telling you, it has been so helpful to me because now I could begin to reshape my mind and my brain. Okay, so I could start to operate without the, without the mushroom tinctures, which is really, really cool. Even though I do still like my mushrooms. But what I really want to say to you is that it's a very difficult journey. It's a very hard journey to deal with, and a lot of times, we don't reach out and ask for help because we don't want to burden people anymore. We don't want to keep on burdening with your problems, and sometimes, we're so used to it, and this is why I want to encourage you to be very mindful of what you say to people. Because if I had to say to many, many people, this is how I feel, they would be like, no, man, you've got everything going for yourself, and you're such a nice person, and you've got everything to live for, and don't be silly. But it's not so much about being silly, or like even as some people would say, looking for attention. It is a real difficult uphill battle to deal with. And people that are having suicidal tendencies are more often than not very alone in their lives. Maybe they struggle to keep a job or to run a job or to connect with people and stuff like that. They usually feel incredibly lonely in this world. They feel like a burden to other people. Yes? And so if you have gone through this difficult experience, either you being the suicidal person who has now made it, or you have dealt with someone where you lost someone to suicide. I just, I want to say to you that it's a hard thing to deal with. And if you have difficulty working through it, then I want to encourage you to get some help, to get some support, to work through it. And again, I want to remind you that it's not your fault. It's not anything that you've done. There is a certain thing that happens in this person's mind and that I want to be stopped. And the biggest thing of it all, and this is where people blame themselves the most, is that you will notice that your loved one, that your person, even your neighbor, your friend, your colleague, whatever, they concern you because you can see that something is wrong. And then they start to do better. They become really happy, they become fulfilled, they become jolly and smiling and everything. Like a lot of times people have this thing like 24 hours before this person committed suicide, or even 12 or 6 hours before, they were all happy, they were having fun, and they were really enjoying life. A lot of times it's because, it's a real struggle in your mind to make that choice. So when the person themselves made the choice, they feel a sense of relief. And that is why they are happy. Because now they've made a decision how to deal with the burden. So I don't want you to blame yourself that you missed the signs, or that you should have known something, or even sometimes somebody may have said something and you may not have taken them all that seriously, which also goes hand in hand with don't just brush off things that people say to you, but also at the end of the day, and this is a hard one sometimes to fathom, but effectively in life, we're not really responsible for other people. Now obviously there's many different dynamics within that. This is not like a cold hard saying thing, but I think I'm just going to end off by saying that it may be very, 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 very hard to accept. But if a person has been struggling and they did eventually commit suicide, it usually is better for them because they're out of that daily hell that they've been living. And I personally don't believe that the creator of all that is, discard you to this dark, dooming sort of place because you had the audacity to do with your life what you chose. I don't believe that. Okay? I really, really don't. I do know that sometimes souls do get a little bit stuck. You know, that's what I sometimes get in practice. Souls get stuck when they commit suicide. But then, you know, it's in a theta healing session, we can help them to get unstuck. You know, because eventually everybody goes to the light in any case. And the supposed, so to speak, stuck soul is in a place where there isn't time. So even if they're stuck there for 10,000 years, to them it's like a blink of an eye. Okay, and it's just a really hard thing to deal with. And if it's something that you're dealing with, I want you to find a way to deal with the pain. Let someone like myself, let someone else that you trust, that resonates with you, let them help you, let them support you. Okay, let them help you to work through this. Yes? Because it is a very difficult thing to deal with. It really, really is. But you don't have to deal with it alone, and you don't have to keep on blaming yourself for what has happened. Yeah? You don't have to keep on blaming yourself for what has happened. Also, sometimes, now this is a very hard one for people to fathom sometimes, but sometimes from the soul perspective, it might be within somebody's soul plan that they came to commit suicide, yeah. Because it can wake up the other people in a way that they wouldn't have been woken up, you know, initially. Grief often has a way of leading to a spiritual awakening. Grief, trauma, loss, you know, those things can often lead to a spiritual awakening, you know. And sometimes as souls, we make those arrangements with each other, we make those agreements with each other. Okay. But from my heart, I just want to send you so much love and so much compassion. And if you are currently a person who is struggling with not feeling worthy of living and that you are a mistake, I believe 100% that I was a mistake. That on the one day that God made me, God made a mistake. He had a oopsie. It's a very difficult thing to believe. I don't say it lightly. It's a difficult thing to believe. That you are the one mistake that the Creator has made. And if you are feeling that way, I just want to tell you from my heart, you know, I have a very, very, very beautiful life these days. It's taken me a lot to get to where I am, and sometimes it's more challenging than other days. And even for me to make this particular video, it's taken me years to be able to do this because, you know, I'm a life coach. You know, I'm a transformation guide. I help people to work through their challenges. I'm a tarot reader. I'm a psychic. You know, sometimes in the spiritual community, people can be a little bit nippy or very nippy. You know, and you measure yourself against what other people say and think and stuff like that. But I want to remind you that your life is about you. And to do what is right for you. And sometimes that means that we have to cut out other people's dramas. That even sometimes means that we have to say, you know what, sorry, I'm not going to talk to you. That might even mean that we have to completely leave people's lives or cut them out of their lives, become unreachable. But I want you to remember that your life is about you. And I want you to prioritize yourself. I want to send you lots of love. If you've dealt with suicide, if you feel that, or you know, in whichever way, or you just feel that there's something that you can put in the comments that might be beneficial to other people, that would be a really nice thing to do. I look forward to connecting with you in the next video.